Good morning. Hello, everybody. There's a weird glow going on my phone here today. I don't know what that's about. We're just going to go with it. It's dark. It's raining out. It's been raining, so my lighting isn't all that great. You'll just have to bear with me. Let me try something here. Let's see. Well, now it's dark. So it's either too dark or too bright. I don't know what to tell you. We are back for another Bible story reading. I think that might have been better. We are back for another Bible story reading. For those of you joining for the first time, what we do here is we go through stories of the Bible. For people who don't know what they are, everybody has the right to know what the stories are in this book. Too often people want to tell you what's in there. They don't want you to find out for yourself. Because if you read this for yourself, then you might know the truth about it rather than what they want you to know. So we go through the stories for people who have either never read the Bible or have forgotten some of the stories that are in there. We have been going through the book of Daniel, some of the stories that are in there. We talked about Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and they, if you remember, they got thrown into the fiery furnace because they wouldn't bow down to the golden image that King Nebuchadnezzar had set up for them to worship. Now we are going to start into another chapter, chapter 4, and we're going to start with this story. This is a pretty intense story. Some of the stories that we read are fun and energetic. Some of them are funny. Some of them are sad. This one has a lot of layers to it. I'm going to raise this up just a little, see if we can get some better lighting. Let's try that and see. Nope, sorry, you're just going to have to put up with it. Listen to my voice, don't look at my face. All right. So we're going to go through this. It's a little bit of a long chapter, and we're just going to dive right in with chapter 4 of Daniel. Remember, King Nebuchadnezzar had changed Daniel's name to Belteshazzar. And that is important for you to know because as we go through this chapter, Belteshazzar and Daniel are the same person, okay? King Nebuchadnezzar, to those of every people, nation, and language who live on the whole earth, may your prosperity increase. I am pleased to tell you about the miracles and wonders the Most High God has done for me. How great are the miracles and how mighty his wonderful his kingdom is, an eternal kingdom, and his dominion is from generation to generation. I, Nebuchadnezzar, was at ease in my house and flourishing in my palace. I had a dream, and it frightened me. While in my bed, the images and visions in my mind alarmed me. So I issued a decree to bring all the wise men of Babylon to me in order that they might make the dream and the dream's interpretation known to me. When the magicians, mediums, Chaldeans, and diviners came in, I told them the dream, but they could not make its interpretation known to me. Finally, Daniel, named Belteshazzar, after the name of my God, and a spirit of the holy gods in him, came before me. I told him the dream. Belteshazzar, head of the magicians, because I know that you have the spirit of the holy gods and that no mystery puzzles you, explain to me the visions of my dream that I saw and its interpretation. In the visions of my mind, I was lying in my bed and I saw this. There was a tree in the middle of the earth, and it was very tall, and the tree grew large and strong. Its top reached to the sky, and it was visible to the ends of the earth. Its leaves were beautiful, its fruit was abundant, and on it was food for all wild animals, and the wild animals found shelter under it. The birds of the sky lived in its branches, and every creature was fed from it. As I was lying in my bed, I also saw in the vision of my mind a watcher, a holy one, coming down from heaven. He called out loudly, "Cut down the tree and chop off its branches. Strip off its leaves and scatter its fruit. Let the animals flee from under it and the birds from the branches, but leave the stump with its roots in the ground, and with a band of iron and bronze around it in the tender grass of the field. Let him be drenched with dew from the sky and share the plants of the earth with the animals. Let his mind be changed from that of a human, and let him be given the mind of an animal for 7 periods of time. This word is by decree of the watchers, and the decision is by command from the holy ones. This is so that the living will know that the Most High is ruler over human kingdoms. He gives it to anyone he wants, and sets the lowliest of people over it. This is the dream that I, King Nebuchadnezzar, had. Now, Belteshazzar, tell me the interpretation, because none of the wise men of the kingdom can make the interpretation known to me. But you can, because you have a spirit of the holy gods. Then Daniel, whose name is Belteshazzar, was stunned for a moment, and his thoughts alarmed him. The king said, Belteshazzar, don't let the dream or its interpretation alarm you. Belteshazzar answered, My lord, may the dream apply to those who hate you, and its interpretation to your enemies. The tree you saw, which grew large and strong, whose top reached the sky and was visible to the whole earth, and whose leaves were beautiful and its fruit abundant, and on it was food for all under it, the wild animals lived, and its branches the birds of the sky lived, that tree is you, your majesty, for you have become great and strong. Your greatness has grown and even reaches the sky, and your dominion extends to the ends of the earth. The king saw a watcher, a holy one, coming down from heaven and saying, Cut down the tree and destroy it, but leave the stump with its roots in the ground, and with a band of iron and bronze around it. In the tender grass of the field, let him be drenched with the dew from the sky, and share food with the wild animals for 7 periods of time. This is the interpretation, your majesty, and this is the decree of the Most High that has been issued against my lord the king. You will be driven away from people to live with the wild animals. You will feed on grass like cattle and be drenched with dew from the sky for 7 periods of time, until you acknowledge that the Most High is ruler over human kingdoms, and he gives them to anyone he wants. As for the command to leave the tree's stump with its roots, your kingdom will be restored to you as soon as you acknowledge that heaven rules. Therefore, may my advice seem good to you, my king. Separate yourself from your sins by doing what is right, and from your injustices by showing mercy to the needy. Perhaps there will be an extension to your prosperity. All this happened to King Nebuchadnezzar. At the end of 12 months, as he was walking on the roof of the royal palace in Babylon, the king exclaimed, Is this not Babylon the Great, that I have built to be a royal residence by my vast power and for my majestic glory? While the words were still in the king's mouth, a voice came from heaven. King Nebuchadnezzar, to you it is declared that the kingdom has departed from you. You will be driven away from people to live with the wild animals, and you will feed on grass like cattle for 7 periods of time, until you acknowledge that the Most High is ruler over human kingdoms, and he gives them to anyone he wants. At that moment, the message against King Nebuchadnezzar was fulfilled. He was driven away from the people. He ate grass like cattle, and his body was drenched with dew from the sky until his hair grew like eagle's feathers and his nails like bird's claws. But at the end of those days, I, Nebuchadnezzar, looked up to heaven, and my sanity returned to me. Then I praised the Most High and honored and glorified the one who lives forever, for his dominion is an everlasting dominion, and his kingdom from generation to generation. All the inhabitants of the earth are counted as nothing, and he does what he wants with the army of heaven and the inhabitants of earth. There is no one who can block his hand or say to him, What have you done? At that time my sanity returned to me, and my majesty and splendor returned to me for the glory of my kingdom. My advisors and my nobles sought me out. I was reestablished over my kingdom, and even more greatness came to me. Now I, Nebuchadnezzar, praise, exalt, and glorify the King of the heavens, because all his works are true, and his ways are just. He is able to humble those who walk in pride. It's the end of chapter 4. There are 3 ways that we look at these Bible stories and passages when we read them. 1, what does it say? We have to have reading comprehension. This is why we do this. We read this so that we know what it says. 2, what was it saying to the people of the times? What was the culture and the history? And we have to take everything into context to really understand what's going on. We can't just pull out a little piece of this and think we know what it's about. And lastly, what, if anything, is this saying to us today? So what we see here is that King Nebuchadnezzar has had a very disturbing dream. He has dreamed that he sees this tree, this mighty giant tree that is visible to everyone. It's a great tree. It has wonderful fruit. Animals take shelter under it and in it. The birds of the sky nest in it. The tree feeds people. It's a great tree. But then he sees that it gets cut down. The animals flee from it. Nobody can eat from it. It gets cut down, but the stump is left. And the roots are still in the ground. And the tree suddenly has the mind of an animal to eat the grass like an animal. And he's disturbed by this. And so he calls for Daniel and says to him, look, I know that your God, Nebuchadnezzar is still somewhat confused about Daniel's God. He thinks that the God of Daniel is kind of like his gods, his make-believe gods, the gods that were created by human hands. He doesn't understand that the God of Daniel, our God, created the human hands. So he is the God of all creation. And King Nebuchadnezzar does not yet understand this. But he does know that for whatever reason, this God that Daniel worships is powerful enough to, and has empowered him to give the interpretation of this dream to him. Well, Daniel is alarmed. He's a little bit in shock when he hears the dream and gets the interpretation. And he's probably a little apprehensive to tell the king what this is. But King Nebuchadnezzar says, don't worry, just tell me, what is this? And he says, well, king, that tree that you see, that represents you. And your kingdom, your mighty kingdom, you have this mighty kingdom going on, and it's going to be cut down, essentially. And you will be living in the wild, eating grass like a wild animal for a period of 7, it says a period of 7, I think, it could be days, weeks, I don't know, but it's a period of 7. And somebody more scholarly than me out there can probably tell you what that exact amount of time is, but it's a period of 7. So a year goes by, 12 months go by, and one day King Nebuchadnezzar's walking along the roof of his palace, and he's looking out over his kingdom. And he sees how wonderful his kingdom is, and he gets a little prideful. He says, look what I have created. Look at all that I have accomplished. Look at my splendor. Isn't this wonderful? And while the words are still in his mouth, it says, while he is still speaking these words, God says to him, King Nebuchadnezzar, you are going to be taken out of here. Your kingdom is you're going to be removed from your kingdom. And you're going to go live in the wilderness and eat grass. Well, he does. He gets taken out of there and he goes insane. He goes absolutely insane. And he's out in the fields. He's eating grass like the wild animals. So imagine seeing this human being on their hands and knees munching on grass like a cow. That's what was going on. His hair grew they describe it as feathers like birds. Have you ever seen somebody who has not washed or brushed their hair for long periods of time and it grows and it's just all nappy looking? Well, now he looks like a wild animal. And his nails grew like the claws of birds. He didn't trim his nails. He looked insane. He didn't just go insane. Now he looked insane. But then his sanity comes back to him, just like was told in the prophecy of the dream, that Daniel explained to him. He said that's all going to happen, but you'll be restored. Your kingdom's going to be restored. And so, or you'll be restored to your kingdom. So sure enough, his advisors and stuff, they went and looking for him. They found him. They brought him back. His sanity returns to him. In his sanity, he realizes that God is the King of Kings, that God is more powerful than even he is. And he says, he is able to humble those who walk in pride. The story of King Nebuchadnezzar teaches us that when we take credit for everything, when we walk in pride and we say, look what I have accomplished, look what I have done, God will humble us. He will humble us. Things will not go well for us when we try to strip God of his power and take it, claim it for our own. You see, God had established King Nebuchadnezzar as a powerful king. And Nebuchadnezzar took that for himself and decided that he was the one who was so powerful. He also learned that who God is, that God is God, that God, the God of Daniel, was the God above all gods. He was the great king, that he is the one who was the king of the heavens, that he was in charge of all other gods. Excuse me, that he was all powerful. We have so many things that we can learn from this, and it's wonderful that we get to have examples of people who have gone before us and have had to do the suffering for us so that we can learn from them. If we read these stories and we learn that, hey, maybe I ought to not be such a prideful person because I might go insane. That could drive me crazy. Bad stuff could happen to me. Everything that I have, what is it they say? Pride goes before a fall, correct? So if we start to get prideful, then we can already know that things are not going to turn out well for us. We know that because we have examples of people that has happened to in the Bible. Are there things in your life that you are taking credit for that you should not be taking credit for? Are there things in your life that God has done for you, that he has blessed you with, that he has given you provisions for, that he has given you abilities towards and talents for? And rather than saying, thank you, God, for those talents, you've proclaimed to the world how wonderful you are? I would caution you against that and just examine yourself in that area. We have a wonderful example here. I hope you got something out of this today. I hope you learned something. Maybe you didn't know that story before. Maybe that was one that you had not heard. I hope you learned something out of this today. The next story that we get to comes from chapter 5, and it's a crazy story, and I'm going to give you a heads up on that. How many times have we used the phrase, the handwriting's on the wall? The handwriting was on the wall. We're going to learn where that phrase comes from when we read tomorrow's story. So I look forward to us being together next time. I hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll see you later. Goodbye.